From the shadows where the whispers grow, through the night where the warriors flow, feel the power in the tales untold. Lord Ninja Choke takes a strong hold.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Lord Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. And today we're going to be discussing UFC 318, headlined by Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier in their third encounter. To begin with, we're going to recap how we did last week, our last event, and in general. So we're doing quite well. We had a 3 out of 3 last week. So if you listen to episode 10, you will have heard Will pick Derek Lewis. I picked Steve Garcia, and Josh picked Morgan Sharia. So now we have picked 23 out of 30 correctly across the 10 episodes that we've recorded for a 77% hit rate at average odds of close to even money. And I'll hand over to Will, who's going to recap his betting slate for the last card.
Yeah, kind of a weird one for me overall. As you can see on the screen, the most important, well, not most important, but the most interesting statistic that stands out there is that picks-wise, I got 10 right and 2 wrong. So you'd think, great analysis, well done, must have been a great card for you. But unfortunately, the 2 picks I got wrong were the 2 fights that I had money on, and therefore I kind of just sabotaged myself. Kind of a difficult one to swallow, really, in that regard. Derek Lewis came through to save the day for me after Calvin Kattar kind of, really put a dent into my winnings. Chidi Njokuani also fell off a cliff. Those were the 2 losses. Really lucky to have made that under 2.5 on Walker and Nzechukwu look like light work. So shout out to Volta Walker for that one. And also Fatima Klein winning ITD in the dying seconds, or the last round there, with a really nice head kick. I did not see that coming. I was pretty convinced that I was going off to a losing start there. So shout out to her. Yeah, happy overall. Nice to always be in profit. But to be honest, it could have been so much better, given that I reread my analysis, my Reddit breakdown for the entire card, and I think I had some really shrewd takes on most of the fights. So yeah, hoping I could have done better than just plus 1.08 units, but oh well, we move.
So yeah, this was my results for UFC Nashville, and those who are familiar with what I do, I don't do the same as Will and Josh. Don't break down every fight on a card. I just tend to place bets. But I think I spent so much time analysing the last card that I would have been best served making picks, because I did too much analysis, shall we say. I had paralysis by analysis, and you can see by my really messed up betting slate that I started to doubt myself by placing bets on Calvin Kattar when I initially had 4 units on Steve Garcia. It was an uncomfortable week, and mainly because I was basically going head-to-head with Will, and I had to share for a unit parlay with Bonfim, and I had too much confidence in Bonfim, who I really honestly thought he was probably going to lose that fight, and I don't understand how he won the split decision, but I'm very, very grateful for it. So what should have probably been a better card for me, I think I'm just happy that it ended up in the green, because I actually had the Derek Lewis in rounds 1, 2, and 3, the bottom second from bottom line here. You can see I hedged to share a bet. So yeah, I probably shouldn't have hedged Kattar, but yeah, it is what it is. I think overall just happy to be green. And I'll hand over to Josh.
Yeah, pretty disappointing to see the predictions didn't go so well for me. Some slips and falls along the way, but all my locks landed, which is pretty good. And in terms of my parlay and whatever, this is a new addition to my whole recap stuff. The parlay missed because Matthews just bulldozed through Njokuani really quickly. But I guess the positive here is the alt bets have kind of landed. The Walker sub round 1 or round 2 was really, really great to see, because 9.50 is juicy. I like that. And the Lewis KO round 1 or 2 was also a pretty good hit. Other than that, I got nothing else to say. I hope that 318 I see a lot more correct predictions, and that's about it for me.
So this is the top-down view of UFC 318, and yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on the card? Maybe I'll go to Josh first because I know you have some sentiments on this.
Yeah, I certainly do, man. First of all, looking over the card, there are a lot of old fighters here. I mean, Prachnio, Fugit, Johnson, Pitbull, Rodriguez, Poirier, they're all old. And I feel like the UFC is doing their whole roster clean out this week. You know, we're going to see a lot of fighters being kicked off the roster, which is going to be sad, but, you know, it's a young man's sport. When it comes to the prelims, it's pretty weird. I can't really get a grasp on it. Like, there are a lot of fights that are pretty skewed, like Gautier, Valentine, Fajeda, McVeigh. You get Dulatov and Prado, Veretennikov is. They're all fights that are favorite heavy, and I don't know, hard to make money on the prelims, in my opinion. And last but not least, really, Poirier's last fight, it's going to be pretty crap because I am a huge fan of Poirier. I've been following his career for a long time, and what he's done outside of the octagon has been nothing short of beautiful. You know, I still remember his fight against Dan Hooker back in 2020. Absolute war that was, and once this event's over, I'm personally going to make a $50 donation to the Good Fight Foundation, which is a foundation founded by Dustin and his wife. At this point, it's a tradition. I always make those donations whenever he fights. So nothing really new here, but I just want to highlight that the Good Fight Foundation is really, really solid. And I'm so happy that Poirier is making a mark positively on the community and not negatively like John Jones has, I guess. How about you guys?
Yeah, I think the foundation's a really good thing to be doing. It's just a demonstration of a great way to use your platform for good. So yeah, I think I'll join you on making a donation after this card, definitely. But yeah, for me, I think I do like a lot of the fights here from like an entertainment perspective. But I think the one thing that's really missing on this card is like nothing really matters, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't really feel like many results here are going to do anything to shift the divisions. You know, a lot of the guys are like mainstays who have already hit their ceiling, who are just sort of like fighters we enjoy watching, like Dan Ige and Kevin Holland. You know, if they win this fight, it doesn't put the division on notice. It doesn't make any change to anything, really. Like, will they even go up in the rankings? I don't know. There's like the only people that actually really need a win here are like the undefeated like prospects that we are interested to see how far they can go. So, and I think you have to go quite far down the card to actually find someone like that. And obviously the main event itself, I'm not a huge fan of the whole BMF belt thing. It's just a gimmick thing as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, I'm very excited to see this fight because it's going to be, you know, great. But yeah, I just wish that I always think pay-per-views are supposed to be really important for the overall scope of the UFC and the trajectory and the journey that we're going to go on for the rest of the year with these divisions. But I feel like this card could simply not happen and nothing would change. But I'm also just a pessimistic hater.
Do you mean to tell me that Jimmy Crute versus Marcin Prachnio is not going to move forward the light heavyweight division, or Ryan Spann versus Lucas Bresky is not going to move forward the heavyweight division? Will?
I mean, you say that, but like the light heavyweight division is so shit that one of them probably goes into the rankings with a win. So maybe you're right after all.
God forbid. No, I was saying that tongue in cheek. I think I definitely am with you and echo your sentiment that I don't think that many of these fights will be needle movers in their divisions. But there are a couple which are really super interesting for me, like Phillips versus Oliveira. That's going to be a good fight. And I know people are less excited about the one below it, Vittoria versus Brendan Allen, but I think that does have some kind of implication at middleweight. One of those two might be able to correct their career because they're both on 2 fight skids. But overall, yeah, there's nothing here which really does anything for me significantly. And that's why we are going to focus higher up the card on the main co-main and then one of the main card fights in Ego versus Fryer. So with that, we're going to start with the main event, and I will hand over back to Will.
Yeah, so despite having said that I'm not a huge fan of the BMF belt, I've chosen the main event to be the one I'm going to talk about. We all know Max Holloway. We all know Dustin Poirier. They are two of the most prolific fighters in the last decade, maybe even the last 15 years. I still remember their debut. I remember the hype on Max Holloway when he was a prelim guy. And obviously, you know, but both guys, you could really tell were going to be big players in their respective divisions from the moments that they made their first few fights in the UFC. So it is really cool to see this moment where both of their careers, especially Poirier, obviously because he is retiring, seeing both of their careers sort of being sort of like bookended from start to finish across a whole like UFC fans journey. So it's quite cool for me to acknowledge the fact that I have been watching both of these guys' careers from start to finish. But for all of the lamenting and all of the reminiscing on happy times in both of their careers, this fight, breaking it down, is one where you really have to kind of highlight the intangibles and the red flags, I think, because we've seen them fight twice before. The first fight, obviously, was so long ago. It was Holloway's debut. It doesn't really mean anything. I think we can kind of gloss over that one. But, you know, what we got from the second fight that they had was a 25-minute war in the lightweight division. And we got exactly what we expect, you know, a striking fight between two high volume, hard hitting when they want to, but also durable guys. And it's a long-winded 25-minute affair where both dudes are capable of winning any of the rounds, and they will win one round or the other way will swing. It literally is. It's small margins for error and small margins of superiority between them. So, you know, I don't really think that there is an angle that you can look at this fight and go, oh, this is definitely a clear route and advantage that one guy necessarily has. I think they are just very well matched, and I think that is reflected in the betting odds. As you can see on screen there, we've got Max Holloway at around, I think it's moved a little bit now, so I think he's around -125, -130, with Poirier around +100 to +110. And overall, I kind of agree with those sentiments. So going into the intangibles a little bit, obviously people will know that Holloway is 0-2 against Dustin Poirier, but I think that you can kind of explain away both of those. Obviously, as I said, the first fight doesn't really matter. But that second fight, Max Holloway moved up on relatively short notice from featherweight to lightweight to take on Poirier, as it was an opportunity for him to, I think it was for a belt, wasn't it? It was for the vacant lightweight belt. So it was an opportunity for double champ status. And around that time, everyone wanted to be a double champ, didn't they? So it made sense for Holloway to move up. But it was very much a short decision and not a long-term career one for him. And we've seen that happen so many times in the UFC. I think back to Adesanya versus Blachowicz. If you're going to make that quick journey up a weight class and just sort of, you know, one and done it, you're not going to get the sort of body composition that you need to actually compete in that division. And we saw from that fight, it kind of did look like a fully fledged lightweight versus a featherweight who's just holding extra pounds. And it showed itself in the power, it showed itself in the physicality. And that's what got Dustin Poirier over the line in that fight against Holloway. But I don't think we're going to see that. I think this fight here, given the fact that Holloway has really committed to 155, he said recently in an interview, I don't even know why I'm in the featherweight rankings anymore. I'm not going back. So we are getting a Max Holloway who is a fully fledged lightweight here. He's done it before as well. Obviously, we all remember that fight against Justin Gaethje recently. He demonstrated power in that fight, you know, and as much as we love Max Holloway, the only real criticism you could make of him is that he is a bit pillow fisted. So many of his wins at featherweight were decision wins, and he's a guy who has insanely high volume, but not a lot of like actual power in those shots. But there he was throwing a punch in the 14th minute and 59th second against Justin Gaethje and putting him to sleep. So he has definitely found a way to size himself up to become a fully fledged lightweight. And I think that bridges the gap to basically mean that you can't necessarily rely on what you saw in that second fight. But whilst I think that that kind of levels it out. I personally just think that Max Holloway, in a pound for pound conversation, is a better fighter than Dustin Poirier. I think that whilst, as I said earlier, things are pretty even between the two, and it makes sense that the betting line is quite close. Max has an intensity and a volume and a ability to sort of grow into a fight that Poirier also has, but I think he just does it better. And I think that Holloway is gonna start to pull away in the later rounds here. It'll obviously still be competitive, but I just think he'll get comfortable and he'll enter into the matrix in a similar way that he did against Justin Gaethje. And I just think that once he enters into that, like, I'm the best boxer in the UFC flow state, I think you will just see a difference in overall volume and overall just tenacity against Dustin Poirier. And I think that will be enough to get it over the line. There are other talking points available here to sort of swing it back the other way. Some people are concerned about Max Holloway's durability. Obviously, he's just coming off his first ever serious knockout loss against Ilia Topuria. That was at featherweight. We know he's been sort of struggling to make featherweight quite as much, so potentially his chin was compromised there. And obviously, Topuria is looking like pound for pound one of the hardest hitters we've seen in the UFC. So maybe he gets a pass for that. There was also a moment in the Korean Zombie fight where he got like compromised, which was a bit concerning. So I can kind of see where people are coming from with that durability of Holloway, but he is moving up here. That usually does help replenish any sort of like durability deterioration moving up in weight. So I'm happy to trust him here. I don't think Holloway is going to get put down and put away by Poirier. And I don't really think that Poirier is going to get put away by Holloway either. I do think this one goes 25 minutes. I am intrigued, but also kind of terrified for what that last 10 seconds is going to be, because if Holloway wants to allow that to happen, which we know he want to, because it's kind of his thing now, Poirier, who's obviously retiring, is definitely going to want to have that like 10-20 second swinging contest. So that should be absolute cinema. So make sure that you're tuning in for that bit. But yeah, I mean, a little bit of a discussion on the retirement side for Poirier. He's not the kind of guy that's going to be like taking major time off and like showing up for a paycheck. But when you're looking at it from like an analysis perspective, I don't think it's a positive that a fighter knows they are retiring, especially someone like Poirier, who has a history, as we mentioned earlier on with his charity work, has a history of doing things outside the cage and like having his fingers in the pies, as they say. So I think, what's he been up to? What kind of a life is he setting up for himself? Has he been busy with some sort of like just extracurricular stuff going on during his camp here? Does that mean he's taken a little bit of time off? He's been a little bit distracted? I don't know. But I would imagine that if you were a fighter who was preparing for a post MMA lifestyle, you would be looking at all of the avenues you can explore. Whereas Max Holloway's just showing up locked in to do what he does and win back against a guy that he's lost to twice. So for me, it seems like the retirement narrative may have a little bit of a negative on the Poirier side, or it does absolutely nothing. So it's negative at worst. But yeah, I just think that from looking into this fight, all signs point ever so slightly to the Max Holloway side. So when this fight was closer to a pick'em, I placed a 2-unit bet on Max Holloway, and Max Holloway is the pick for me. So whilst Max Holloway is the pick for me, I think that this is going to be a hotly contested fight. Both guys have the power to put each other away. There are question marks. So in terms of my confidence, I've gone with a 2 out of 3 for this one, because, you know, Poirier, you can't count him out. It would be a lovely fairy tale moment for him to get the win in his last ever fight. And I think it is possible, but Holloway's still the pick for me.
What about you, Josh? How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I dread this fight because it is, as we say, you know, Poirier's last fight, and I don't really want to see him get knocked out, although there might be a possibility of that, and I'll tell you why. Poirier in the last 2 years has taken a whole lot more damage that is more detrimental to his career or to his brain health than Holloway has. I mean, he got rocked by Benoit Saint-Denis a few times. He got carried by Justin Gaethje. Chandler hits like a truck, and Poirier felt that. And Islam himself has pretty much brutalized Poirier on the feet. And what that translates to is Poirier is very hittable. And whilst I don't really expect a KO that cleanly, I guess, there will be moments in which Holloway will land and Poirier might stumble backwards or look really, really hurt. My most biggest question for this fight, I suppose, is how much has Holloway improved his defense on the feet, because he is coming off his first KO loss against Poirier, and typically when that happens, I mean, we see fighters evolve with their defense. You know, they're more vigilant about raising their arms or being away from any retaliatory strikes. And with Poirier being the more longer fighter in terms of reach alone, I do think that Holloway might come into this fight a bit more, not cautious, but a bit more defensively sound. So we might see a lot of counters and not full on aggression like what we normally see from Holloway. But yeah, that's all I have really. And I mean, I'm so happy that the odds here are pretty much close. That's a blessing. So I'm happy about that. And yeah, what about you, Dom?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you're making about Max. I think he has been more reserved. You know, I'm thinking about the Arnold Allen fight, which he won clearly, but he was not like throwing like crazy. I mean, he's a guy who's known for his volume, and I think we'll mention that potentially moving up in weight will help with the recovery, because the major red flag, as you've both mentioned, is the Topuria knockout. I can only assume that he's taken the ample time to rest. I think that the fight against Topuria was a while ago now. Do either of you know when he fought Topuria?
That was October last year.
Yeah, so I think it's quite a while, right? You know, they say 6 to 12 months. It's not 12 months, it's more than 6. So yeah, that's definitely a bit of a red flag. I am on Holloway here, and I think one of the key things for me is really, you know, the first fight was Max's debut, so we can kind of, you know, take that as what it was. It was a debut, and he got subbed. I don't think that that's a typical way that this fight a fight between the two of them would play out. And then in the rematch, you mentioned that he obviously stepped up at short notice, up a weight class, and he didn't look like a lightweight. And in the first round, he got hurt by Poirier, and Poirier like sold out to try and finish him in the first round. Max recovered, and so the second round was a bit closer, at least by the way the strike count went. And then in rounds 3 and 4, Max took over in terms of volume, but his strikes weren't hurting Dustin as much as Dustin was hurting Max. I think there was also an incident, I don't know which round it happened, and it could have been 3, it could have been 4. Even though Max was winning those rounds, he got cut open quite badly. So, you know, those are two things which really affected that fight. Early, not knockdown, it's not recorded as a knockdown, but it was an early he wobbled Holloway early, and then he cut him at some point. So I'm not taking anything away from Dustin. That was a great victory, but that was a while ago now. I think Poirier was more in his prime. I think Max was 27 at that point, and Poirier was like 32. Now it's like, you know, time has shifted, right? Holloway's 33 and Poirier's 36, something like that. So, you know, it's we're 6 years removed from that original rematch. So I feel pretty confident that technically Holloway is going to be faster. He's not going to be more powerful, and provided his defense is sound, I think his striking is better. So I don't know if Dustin is going to grapple or not here, because what happened interestingly in their last fight was that Dustin was forced to grapple in the 4th round. He was taking so many shots from Holloway that he shot. Actually, he got a takedown in that 4th round, and I think that's not beyond, you know, the realm of possibility here, that we do see Dustin employ some sort of grappling. He is a good grappler, but as we know, Max has great takedown defense. So yeah, I'm with Will and with Josh here. I'm taking Max, and we're both giving him the vote of confidence, pushing him from 2 to 4, and moving us on to the co-main.
Yeah, this is a bit of a fun fight, although I don't really think that has any movement within the middleweight division. But anyway, this fight's an opposite stance fight. I mean, Costa, I believe, is the orthodox stance fighter, whereas Kopylov is the southpaw. And typically, what that means is that there's going to be a lot of exchanges with the power side. So we'll be seeing a lot of Kopylov attacking the body of Costa, and Costa trying to land that overhand right against Kopylov. So that's going to be interesting and pretty exciting. Now, to break it down further, Costa is a little bit in a weird spot in his career. I mean, he hasn't fought a lot of times, and when he has fought, it's been a bit underwhelming, I guess. I mean, his fight against Strickland was pretty fun, but then pretty much before that, he looked a bit off, you know. That brings some concern to me because we haven't really seen Costa change up his style. He's always been a powerhouse with his punches. He's always been the one that constantly marches forward a bit, you know, just using his own presence to like threaten his opponents to make them back up. I do expect leg kicks from Costa so he can slow down Kopylov's retreat, and I'll get more to that later. But I do expect that Costa is going to play it very technical early on, and then maybe in the later rounds we'll see a typical Costa fight where he throws heavy and does some weird showmanship stuff. It's hard to gauge how good Costa is, however, at this kind of level, because Kopylov is not a Whitaker, Rockhold, Vittori era fighter. He's a bit of a newer generation fighter, so it's going to be interesting to see if he has the ability to keep up with this younger group of fighters. I do expect that Costa, despite his aggression, despite his forward movement, that he is going to be struck more often by Kopylov, only because Costa, he does defend strikes well, but he's also very square and very still. And Kopylov is very light on his feet. You know, he moves laterally a lot, and he's pretty much a sniper at all ranges. So I expect that Costa is going to be absorbing a lot of strikes, but only to be in a position to fight back. The other thing, and the final thing for Costa here, is that I somewhat expect, and this is niche, this is a bit weird, but I expect him to be a bit iffy on the scales. I mean, he is a huge middleweight. He's chunky. He's got that secret juice going on. I don't know what that is, but you know, I reckon he's gonna struggle. I reckon maybe he's gonna miss by a pound. That's not me being serious, of course. I mean, he can make weight, but I reckon there could be some discussion about his weight failure or, you know, scale issues. Now Kopylov, he is one of those fighters that you don't really hear a lot about, I guess. I mean, I don't. He's not really in the talking point of the middleweight division until now, I guess, because he's fighting Costa. But I do expect that he'll be a much cleaner striker. He is far more technical than Costa, and he has the ability to mix in his footwork with his I don't know, like angle placement, or, you know, he's just a lot more trickier to read than Costa is. So I expect that Costa is going to be reacting to stuff that Kopylov is going to show, but not throw, right? I expect Kopylov to keep this at the kicking distance because obviously Costa throws bombs and Kopylov is very light on his feet, and what light-footed fighters do is they kick a lot. And so I expect that because of the opposite stance and because of all that stuff, Kopylov is going to try and tickle the liver of Costa over and over again. I mean, I reckon the first round's going to be nothing but body kicks. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this one. I mean, it's a really simple one to break down because Costa is so one-dimensional, but so is Kopylov. I mean, we've seen Kopylov fight many times already, and we didn't really see anything too new or anything that surprises us, you know. So my pick here is Kopylov, and yeah, it's going to be a fairly high confidence of 3, and yeah, that's pretty much it for what I got to say. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that you've summarized it really well. I think the other thing to mention about Costa is that you could make a case for him to have lost his last 5 fights, because his sole win, I believe, was against was it Luke Rockhold?
Yeah, it was Rockhold.
Yeah, I mean, he's been facing, the best of the best in a sense. Strickland, Whittaker, beat Rockhold, lost to Vittori. Okay, he might not be the best of the best. Up for debate. Lost to Adesanya, but I think back then Vittori was pretty decent. And I was looking at my betting records. I was like, did I bet on Rockhold? Because that sounds like a bet I would have made. Actually, I had a lot. I had Costa in 3 parlays that event, 2 of which busted, not because of Costa, but that was an event headlined by Merab and Jose Aldo, and I was backing Merab, who was even money against Jose Aldo, and I think it was dominant, unanimous decision. So all this to say that I watched that fight and it was remarkably close. I came away thinking a bit like Bonfim in the last event, that he lost it. Yeah, so I don't know if there's much we can say for Costa, because he doesn't seem to be taking his career seriously, in the sense that he's obviously very active on social media. I don't want to lambast anyone who's active on social media, but doing antics with Tracy Cortez, various other antics on social media to do with his juicing, which is basically openly admitting that he's it's abusing some form of substance. Whether it's legal or not, we don't know, assuming he's always passed his drug tests. And Kopylov is just obviously a very serious young man who's rising through the ranks pretty confidently, and I would be very surprised if Costa's going to derail him. But as you said, in terms of their stats, there's not a lot to go on. I mean, one area which I noticed in the stats is that Kopylov does have a slightly better defense, but it's outweighed by Costa's accuracy. So Costa's striking at 58% accuracy to 50% for Kopylov. So it doesn't mean much, because Kopylov doesn't have many fights in the UFC. I think he's had 5 or 6. I would definitely veer towards Kopylov, and I don't even think necessarily this fight will take place. I can see Costa not making weight, as you said, by too much, and the fight being cancelled. What do you think, Will?
Firstly, I just want to say we can't criticize a man for having "quote unquote" antics with Tracy Cortez. He can do that if he wants to. But yeah, I think this is a really difficult one, because Paulo Costa it's just so complicated, isn't he? That guy, on the day he decided to drink wine before the Adesanya fight, he changed the trajectory of his career massively. I don't think he would have beaten Izzy that night, but just I don't know what has happened to him since then, and I kind of wish he was a little bit more serious so that he may shed some light on it. But I think that from a psychological perspective, it's rare to have seen a fighter fall off so hard after being so close to reaching the top. As we've already dissected the post Adesanya career that Costa has had, but it's really shocking, really, isn't it? How are you going to go from winning a decision against Yoel Romero and standing up to him in the power department to barely being able to finish, well, not even finishing Luke Rockhold, who was a shell of himself around that time. I was also on Costa on all the finishing props on that one. It just felt like such a foregone conclusion, and he really fumbled it. But this is the thing. I'm currently looking at those names, and everybody that he has fought since the Yoel Romero fight has either been a former champion or a former title contender. He has gone through the best of the best, and whilst he's obviously changed after that Izzy loss, and he's not the same guy, and he shouldn't be fighting this top 8 caliber of middleweights, but he still is, and he's losing consistently, and no one would debate that. But I don't think he looks terrible in these fights. His worst performance was the win against Luke Rockhold. He won a round off of Robert Whittaker. He hurt Whittaker, and in a parallel universe close to that one, he could have got a finish there. The Sean Strickland loss was pretty bad. I've just been confused there in seeing that was a split decision. I remember that was an awful scorecard where it was like 50-45 on Costa's favor when I think he lost pretty much every round. But yeah, I think there's just something about Paulo Costa where I'm always hesitant to write him off. I just feel like he still has it, and he could show that he still has it if he managed to like do the work outside the cage to fix whatever issue it is that he has. And then conversely, when I look at Roman Kopylov's record, I am immediately struck by this massive gap in competition. So I've said that, you know, Paulo Costa has faced nothing but champions or title contenders. You look at names like Chris Curtis, Cesar Almeida, Josh Fremd, Claudio Ribeiro, Punahele Soriano, Alessio De Chirico. I think Paulo Costa today could beat all of those guys. Maybe not Cesar Almeida, but like pretty much all of those guys. I think Costa could do them in. And like, yeah, I'm just kind of concerned about like the levels here in a way. I think that whilst I do rate Kopylov, and I do think in a pure striking fight, yes, he definitely is the more technically sound, diverse, quick, and evasive fighter ever so slightly. But when I think back to that Chris Curtis fight, I think that you would use the exact same description there. And I think blueprint-wise, it's a very similar fight to this one. But Kopylov did not perform to the level that he should have in that one. I think he was very similarly priced on the betting line as well. I think he was around like minus 225, minus 250. And yes, he got a finish in the last second, but I think it was 1-1 going into the third. And I was on Kopylov in a parlay, and I was not super convinced. I was kind of worried about him going into that third round. And I definitely know it wasn't a good bet. So yeah, so with one half of me thinking Paulo Costa could surprise people if he can sort his shit out, and the other half of me thinking Roman Kopylov likes to invite a brawl with brawlers, and that's kind of what Costa is when he wants to be. This, to me, feels a little bit like an upset kind of fight, or at least it could be. It all depends on Paulo Costa and what version we get. You cannot put faith in him after everything we've seen since that Israel Adesanya loss, so I'm not going to say you should be betting on Paulo Costa here, but I just have my reservations about Roman Kopylov being a lock and being someone who's going to cover that minus 250 price tag. So I'm not going to give it a +1 on the confidence-ometer, but I do think Kopylov should win. So I'm not like strongly disagreeing or anything. I'm just wary.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's something to think about. The level of competition is very stark. The difference is very stark. I decided to give it a +1. Well, doesn't. So we're high confidence in Kopylov, as we were for the main event in Holloway, which leads us to the Dan Ige versus Pitbull fight. So here we have two veterans, one who is a veteran of the UFC and one who's been fighting outside of the UFC until his last matchup. Ige is 11-8 in the UFC, and Pitbull, as I mentioned, he's just come into the UFC. He's 0-1, but both fighters are 2-3 in their last 5. So Pitbull got styled on, I don't think there's any other word we can use, by Yair Rodriguez in a very one-sided matchup in his UFC debut. He lost by 70 significant strikes in a unanimous decision loss, so 70-17, sorry. And he got knocked down in round 3. So it was just it started out a bit tentative. It looked close. I had a half unit bet on Pitbull, more for his reputation and more out of tailing people. I watched some of his tape and I thought, okay, if this guy can implement any form of grappling, we know that Yair can be grappled. We've seen Volkanovski do it. I mean, not saying Pitbull's on the level of Volkanovski, he's definitely not. And I think, at 38 years old, Pitbull's best days are behind him. Before we came on to the episode, Josh, you're asking if his sort of tentative counter-striking style was something that had been prevalent. I watched his previous fight. So he fought his previous fight in Bellator. So if we go to the next screen, we can see a list of Pitbull's last fights on the right-hand side. As I mentioned, he's just joined the UFC, but he's been bouncing around other organizations, which is also a bit of a strange situation that he was in. So he fought Jeremy Kennedy in Bellator, which he won. So yeah, I watched the whole fight a couple of times, I think this Jeremy Kennedy guy is not very good, because subsequent to losing to Pitbull, he's gone on a 3-loss streak. So he's now lost 4 in a row. And actually, he was winning the Pitbull fight. So nothing happened in round 1. Just like looking at each other. It was a 5-round fight, by the way. It was for the Bellator featherweight championship. So yeah, I mean, round 1, very tentative. Probably give it to Pitbull. He was doing some nice calf kicking. So Jeremy Kennedy was doing literally nothing, and he got calf kicked a few times, which Dan Hardy was loving, of course. Round 2, probably Kennedy's coaches said, look, you need to actually do something. You need to punch Pitbull. So Kennedy started jabbing him a bit more, because he's a taller, longer fighter. I should have mentioned that Pitbull's a bit undersized for featherweight. He's fought at bantamweight before, so he's generally at reach and height disadvantage. And I mean, Kennedy looked massive compared to Pitbull. So yeah, the jab was landing as it should have been for the taller, longer fighter. He was increasing his output, and I gave round 2 to Kennedy. Round 3 starts, and Kennedy drops him or staggers him, and he basically goes down. And so he started to sort of pour on the attack, and he got tangled, right? So this is the error that Kennedy made. He should have separated and tried to finish, but he maybe got overexcited, maybe it was an experience, and he just got tangled up with Pitbull on the fence, and Pitbull recovered. And then the commentator said, like after they separated, Pitbull was always dangerous. Like one punch can change things. And then literally right after that, a left jab and a right cross just changed the fight. He wobbled Jeremy Kennedy, and just literally Kennedy was up on the fence doing nothing and just taking punishment until the referee stopped it. But as I mentioned, Kennedy subsequently lost 3 fights, so he doesn't seem to be at the right level. Before that, Pitbull fought in Rising, as you can see on the right-hand side. He lost to Suzuki in round 1. I do want to mention that in that fight, he took it 1 month after his loss to Pettis. So yes, he did get knocked out in round 1. It was at featherweight. But I don't know if he should have really been taking that fight so quickly after like having a war with Pettis. So I'm going to focus a bit more on Ige now. Ige beat Woodson in his last fight in a somewhat controversial stoppage in round 3. He connected with a big overhand left. Then he landed heavy body shots. Woodson went down. He was like clinging to Ige's leg, and sort of like Ige was hitting his head, and the ref stopped it. I thought it was fine, and people complained about it, but I don't know why they were complaining, because Ige was winning 2-0 on all the judges' scorecards. So, to be ultimately just saving Sean Woodson from unnecessary damage. Before that, Ige lost to Lerone Murphy in what was fairly one-sided. Although Ige had his moments, it was clearly Lerone Murphy win. I think he won a decision there. Everyone remembers the Lopez situation, changing weight classes 3 times. I think he fought at welterweight against Diego Lopez in one of the craziest situations that ever happened in the UFC. Dan Ige came off his couch 6 hours before fighting Lopez. So I don't want to read into that fight too much, except to say Dan Ige did a fantastic job last minute of making a fight of it, coming off the couch. I don't think he was planning to fight anytime soon. He beat Andre Philly. And in general, he's been at the top of the featherweight division for a long time. An interesting stat for Dan Ige: he has 8 knockdowns in 19 UFC fights for a 42% knockdown rate. And Ige is a man who likes to stand and bang. He's lethal with his boxing. He hits super hard. He's got a good jab, and as you can see here, he has a reach advantage. Not a height advantage, so he's always been slightly diminutive in stature in his fights. So he's always generally the slightly smaller fighter. But both these guys, Pitbull and Dan Ige, are short, stocky fighters, and there's a 4-inch reach advantage for Dan Ige. All this to say that I question whether Pitbull is still there as a fighter. I know in the past he's demonstrated offensive grappling, great striking, an all-round MMA game, but it's been a while. So we have to go back to 2022 before he's had a win, which wasn't just where he's demonstrated sort of more aggression. He's he was very, very passive in the Yair fight, and even when he was 2 rounds down, he couldn't up his game to the level of Yair Rodriguez. I did want to make the point that I sort of thought to myself, how would Ige fare against Yair Rodriguez right now? I think that Yair Rodriguez would win that fight. I think it would be closer though. I think Ige would have more of a chance, but I do think he would lose that fight. Not that means that much. So I think really, Dan Ige should win this fight pretty convincingly. The current odds, as you see, actually you can't see the odds on screen right now, but you will see them in a minute. Dan Ige is a -166 favorite with Pitbull plus 140. I think there's still value on the Ige line here, probably down to around -200. I think, does he win this two-thirds of the time? Yeah, I think he probably wins this fight 75% of the time. So make of that what you will. I'm pretty confident in Dan Ige here, and going for a 3 out of 3 on the confidence. How do you guys feel about this?
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said there. I'm fully on board with that. I definitely endorse a play on Ige as well. I also think he should be around -200 here. It's just, I don't know a whole lot about Pitbull. I've never really been someone who's followed Bellator. Being a UK fan, it's not easy with the late start times, and also I swear to God, they program their fights to make sure that as few people are able to watch it as possible. Anyway. Pitbull is not good. That the style that he has evolved into, from being a hard-hitting brawler into a pure counter striker, it really did come unstuck in that Yair Rodriguez fight. I know a lot of people were quite keen on Pitbull pulling off the upset there, but stylistically, just again going up against a rangier kick-based opponent, you really did see all of the ways in which MMA can be such a tricky fight when styles come up against each other, and that kind of patient waiting for the distance to be covered so that he could land those counter shots. It was just so painful to watch. People gave Patchy Mix so much shit for his crossover from Bellator to UFC debut and how underwhelming he was, but I would take Patchy Mix's performance over Pitbull's against Yair personally. But against Dan Ige, I think there will be more opportunities for Pitbull to actually have success with that counter striking style, because Ige is much more of a puncher than a kicker. So there will be moments where we will enter into that range where the counter striking will be live for Pitbull. But I think all of the sort of dissecting that you did, looking at Pitbull's recent performances and the age and the deterioration, is where I really sort of draw a line here. Because Dan Ige is one durable motherfucker, and he is a hard hitter. So when they do enter into that range, even if it is, where Pitbull wants to be in those moments of throwing those counter shots, one guy is getting finished and dropped in consecutive back-to-back fights, and one guy is insanely durable and a heavy hitter. I just think that when these two do collide, if they have those moments in the pocket, I just think that Dan Ige is going to still be standing if they both throw a shot at the same time. And I just think that over the course of 15 minutes, even if there is no finish, I think Dan Ige's ability to just walk forward and throw the heat and clearly be the more dangerous of the two of them is going to really show itself here. Obviously, he also has a reach advantage, so if he wants to play a more measured game and sort of manage the Matador style of Pitbull, I think he can do that also. I just think that, yeah, Dan Ige just seems like the side here, and I think Pitbull, his best days really are behind him, and the performance we saw against Yair, if we get anything similar to that, I don't really know how anyone could ever see Pitbull winning a fight in the UFC, because it was so unenthusiastic and just awful to watch. So yeah, I definitely agree with your strong confidence in Dan Ige. I think he should be a stronger favorite, and I therefore am very happy to give a +1 to the confidence on that one.
Well, for me, if I can just say a few words here, I never. I mean, we spoke about this. You Dom and you Will. We spoke about Ige and this fight. And whilst I was leaning on Ige early on during this conversation, I am holding some fears, I suppose, towards this fight, because I feel like Pitbull is going to maybe be a bit more safe in this fight. In this fight, as we see with a lot of UFC fighters, as they age, and I mean Pitbull's old, they tend to wrestle more. They tend to like want to slow down the fight. They want to be more in control of their opponent. So I reckon that Pitbull is going to waste little time on the feet and focus on those takedowns early, and that might expose Ige's lack of takedown defense. And whilst I'm not saying I'm picking Pitbull here, or I'm choosing no sides at the moment, but I reckon that the chance of an upset here is pretty high. I think that the whole wrestling aspect of Pitbull, his grappling ability, is going to be somewhat prevalent in the whole talking point of this fight. And whilst Ige can get those strikes in, whilst he is the much more cleaner boxer, I just feel like Pitbull is going to maybe rely on his veteran experience to maybe pull ahead here. I mean, he did get dropped by Rodriguez, but maybe that's what might lead him to wrestle this time. Maybe he'll want to play it safe. And yeah, so in terms of my confidence, I got no stake here. I'm just gonna leave it.
Yeah, I don't disagree that I think his best path to victory would be to employ a grappling heavy game plan, because if this stays on the feet for too long, I don't think it will be too pretty for him. So yeah, I think that would be interesting to see if he does that, because he hasn't done it recently. So we'll see what happens.
Can I also just add on that as well? I do definitely agree with you. And if I was game planning for Pitbull's side, I would absolutely be looking to sprinkle that in. But I think you would say the exact same thing against Yair as well, because Yair's takedown defense is equally as bad as Dan Ige's, maybe even worse. At least Ige has. Actually, no, I think they're probably quite similar in that that's definitely the floor on the way to beat them. And I didn't really see enough from Pitbull to really demonstrate that he was aware of that and that was his primary sort of goal. Obviously people can learn and people can change, but based off the fact that he didn't do it against Yair, I'd be confident enough in assuming that we don't see him go super hard with a singlet on against Dan Ige. So hopefully he doesn't anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think that has been shown to be Ige's weakness, but I think that, yeah, it depends where Pitbull's at in terms of his trajectory, because Ige's no slouch on the ground. He's a black belt in BJJ. He has NCAA Division III wrestling background. So yeah, I think unfortunately he's come up against people who can do that to him, and the question is, can Pitbull do it? Why didn't he do it against Jair? I think he shot, but I don't think he did it. Obviously wasn't doing it from the outset. He was very comfortable in the first round against Jair, just to sit back and see what Yair would bring, which is obviously a fantastic array of kicks and a good jab. So yeah, he's going to have to be more proactive here. I'm expecting him to do that. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Let's move on to the bets.
Yeah, so I went quite heavy in on this main event for this weekend for this pay-per-view. Initially, my first move was to bet on Fight Goes the Distance at +110 for Holloway versus Poirier, because personally I just thought that was mispriced, and the line seems to be moving towards that, which is good for me. Yes, a finish is possible, and we spoke about it already, but then that final 15-20 second slugfest is going to be a bit scary. But both men are very consistent decision winners and long distance fighters, whilst they have power, it's not that kind of one shot thing. It's largely TKO accumulation, and I just trust their durability against one another. It seems like the kind of fight that's going to go 25 minutes, but it also seems like the kind of fight that I think Max Holloway is going to pull away on. So I also have 1.15 units on Max Holloway's money line and a small 0.5 unit sprinkle on Holloway in rounds 4, 5, or decision. So a Max Holloway decision is my ideal outcome in that one. That would see me win all 3 bets. Elsewhere, we just talked about it. I've got 2 units on Dan Ige at -150. I got in super early on that one. Very lucky to get there before the trend, because it seems like money is pouring in on Ige, and I think based off what you just heard, I would definitely expect more of that to come in. But my largest bet on this card so far is a parlay on Kevin Holland and Daniel Zellhuber, both of their money lines. I've got 4 units on that at -150. It feels a little bit chalky, and I think if you were to look at that double now with the odds as they are, you wouldn't get anywhere as good of a price. I think Kevin Holland is the parlay piece of the card here. He's currently sat at around -400, which, if I'm honest, I still don't think is tight enough. I think he should be in the -500, maybe even -600 region here. I think the only way Kevin Holland loses that fight is if Kevin Holland does his stupid clown antics and pisses away an easy win. And he seems a lot more locked in at welterweight. His takedown defense is holding up. He's being a consummate professional inside the cage in the last couple of fights, which is exactly what I want to see from a guy as talented as him. So I'm willing to trust him as much as it fills me with fear. So I've got 4 units on Holland and Zellhuber. I've got a couple of props I'm thinking of sprinkling for this one, but they'll be smaller stakes. Zellhuber in rounds 2 and 3 interests me because Michael Johnson will just fall off a cliff randomly. Dan Ige by KO, I didn't actually mention it in the breakdown, but I have a sneaky suspicion that Ige is going to really test the chin of Pitbull, which is low-key declining, given that he's been dropped a couple of times and he did get finished for the first time recently. I think Dan Ige can always deliver a KO, and I think he'll get the opportunity to do so. So something around +300 would really appeal to me there. Also tempted by Vinicius Oliveira in rounds 2 or 3, but just tapping into that Kyler Phillips gas tank narrative. I think a win for Phillips is going to see him have to push a real pace, and I don't think it's a pace he'll be able to keep. So I'm hoping that the pendulum will shift halfway through, as it often does in a Vinicius Oliveira fight, and that he'll get a late finish. Haven't actually obviously locked those in yet because we are very limited on the amount of props we have. We're recording this in the UK on a Monday morning, so we're a long way away from having props, at least a couple of days. If you check out my Reddit page where I post my breakdowns, I've already gone live with that. I'll be updating my bets that I do make as I make them at the bottom of that page. So check there for any further prop bets that I make.
Yeah, and in a wild swing of events, I am completely aligned with Will this week, which is either going to be fantastic or disastrous, probably one or the other. But a nice build up to the event. I won't be so stressed out this week. I'm on the Dan Ige money line. I didn't get in as early as Will. I've hit up -160, and then I parlayed him with Zellhuber. I didn't take the advice on Holland, and the line moved. Interesting that you say you think there's still value. Maybe I'll throw Holland in some parlays. I always have a hard time trusting Kevin Holland, but yeah, D-Rod is he's at the back end of his career and he's not looking good. So I think it's probably something I can get to. Max Holloway, I might be a little bit overexposed in the way that I did with Steve Garcia. Yeah, I have him 2 units on the money line. I have him parlayed with Zellhuber, and I have him winning in rounds 4, 5, or by decision, which was I got the same odds as Will there. But that's moved now, actually. On my book, it's now +140. I was thinking, actually, as you were speaking, a good hedge here might be Poirier decision, no action. So I think if I want to hedge, I think that's going to be the way I go, because I think that might be, I think Poirier finishing Max might be his best opportunity to win this fight, because I think Max's volume is going to be hard to overcome from a judging perspective. Yeah, a bit early getting in on Peter Yan and parlaying with Kopylov, although after our breakdown of the Kopylov, I'm a little bit, I don't know, having a bit of buyer's remorse on this one. Finally, Vittori money line. I do think there's value here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to monitor the money line, do some more tape on Vittori. I forgot that he beat Costa because that's a great win. I think it was quite convincing as well. I don't think it was a close one. I'll have to go back and watch it. But yeah, if he got anywhere to like plus 220, I might have to pull the trigger. But plus 250, anything above that, it's crazy because I know Brendan Allen is good, but he's not that good. And I think he's, it's a close fight. Yes, he should be the favourite, but not this line is wide. And I'm going to hand over to Josh now.
Yeah, short and sweet from me as always. Kopylov via KO points, double chance. I always try and make a bet for the fight that I cover, so this is my single bet for this episode. I am putting 4 units down, which is $20. It's not a lot to some people, but to me that's a crap load. I'm a brokey, so I do think Kopylov is going to win, and his only way to win, honestly, is either KO or points. So that was a bit obvious to me. And the parlay, which I always add in each of these episodes, is an over as parlay. So over 2.5 for Vittori Allen, over 2.5 for Kopylov Costa, and over 4.5 for Holloway Poirier. And as you guys know by now, because I don't shut up about it, more to come on Wednesday. I post my write-ups on Wednesday on the MMA betting subreddit, and you'll see my full slate there. And yeah.
Stuff. Yeah, restoring a bit of my confidence in Kopylov with your very large bet, unitary bet on Kopylov. So to close out today, we're going to talk about the $100 challenge. We had a bit of a discussion before we came on. We're doing pretty well here, actually. I think we've hit 4 out of 5 of our bets. So if you're following along, you'll have been profiting. We've had 2 moneyline hits. We had Nascimento. We've hit 4 out of the last 5. Last week we hit Walter Walker under 2.5, which was hit remarkably quickly. So that was a relief. I think also I had a bet on it, and Will had a bet on it, but we also had this podcast bet on it. So we are now at $232, which we started with $100. So that's a pretty good profit that we've made. And we haven't decided on how we're going to lean with this week's bet. We are very interested in the money line for Max Holloway and also the over 4.5 in that same fight against Dustin Poirier. So we're going to wait and see how the lines develop. We think that potentially money will come in on Dustin. That will make Max more attractive. And yeah, I don't know if we're going to get better line on the over 4.5, but I don't think it will change much. So the plan is to wait and see what happens. We will add to the comments in the YouTube what we decide to do. And next time we'll have a list of all our bets. As I said, we've hit 4 out of 5. So the Vegas fund grows. Probably need to get to 10 times this amount, but we'll see how it goes. So as we come to the end of episode 11, I just want to thank everyone for listening, for supporting. We're approaching 100 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is fantastic. If we can get to 100, I think probably we should do something in recognition of that. We haven't decided what that would be, but some sort of competition giveaway. That seems to be traditional on these types of shows. So yeah, very excited if we can get to 100 subscribers. Yeah, thanks for your support. Yeah, like, subscribe, and keep following us. We'll be back for the next card. Thanks, everyone.